Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Producer Exchange. My name is Scott Sorrell, Director of Global Marketing for Balchem Animal Nutrition and Health, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this Real Producer Exchange webinar where we connect with dairy producers worldwide, diving into their unique challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned. Now let's get started by introducing today's moderator, Mr. Walt Cooley. Walt is the editor for Progressive Dairy Magazine, who shares a deep understanding of and appreciation for the dairy industry. Walt, welcome, and please introduce our featured guest today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. It's great to be here again today, and I'd like to welcome Greg Friendshuh to the Real Producer Exchange. Greg operates Friendshuh Farms, and that's a 1,250 cow operation in Clear Lake, Wisconsin. He has developed a machine to separate his silage by particle size. And since implementing the silage separation technology, he's been able to push his lactating ration to a 60+% homegrown forage mix, while also reducing the inclusion of ground corn. Before I go on, I would like to have Greg start us off by giving us a quick rundown of his operation and tell us about your family too, Greg. Let me get your slide pulled up here and we'll start that off. Sharing the screen now. Take it away, Greg.
Well, thank you, Walt. Jim, thanks for being with us too. I'm going to try to share with you guys our silage separation story. I think we'll probably begin with our farm. Like Walt said, we're about 1,250 to 1,400 cows. We farm about 3,700 acres. We're your typical family farm that started expanding in 2000. With 50 to 100 to 300 to 450, and now we're up to about 1,400 cows. You can see our dairy there. If you look at the yard real close, there's a lot of happenings that have happened in that yard over the years, much like pretty much probably all the farms that have been in business here. We do have a grain operation also. About a third of our crop acres go out as grain. Walt just turned, this is our family. This is our family, I don't know, 3-4 years ago. So we have 7 grandchildren now. I think I counted there's only 4 in that picture. Lori and I have 7 children of our own, 4 of which are still in the house. So we're a young family. There's a lot of action, a lot of moving parts around here. That's the point of, we believe that's the point of why we're here. And we get to enjoy hanging out and growing with our family. The next slide, I think, is our faith and purpose. Now, we invite the Lord in to do everything that we do, but we kind of have to remind ourselves to do that. Here's a picture of on Good Friday. When our family comes home for Easter, I take the little kids out to the corn silage pile and put some crosses in there, and that's to remind us that we have to ask the Lord to help us and be with us, oftenly, because we forget about that. I mean, we don't advertise. We don't want to, our faith is dear to us, and we don't always get it right, but we try to remind ourselves and rely on Him to help us go in the right direction. So that's important to us, I guess. So then we get to the FOD silage separation story. Why we started down this road. Back in 2019, the straw coming off the plains, it was a short growing year. It was kind of cold and wet when the majority of the plains was trying to harvest their straw. And a lot of it wasn't put up fit. We had a lot of bad bales coming in. It was expensive too because there was a shortage because of it. We had cows that were getting sick, and we sit down with our nutritionist, Keith Sather, at the kitchen table, and the wheels had fallen off once again. And here we are having this conversation about the transition diets. And this time it was, in the back of my mind, I've always disliked straw. It's not palatable. It's more expensive than ground corn. It seems like something that should be a little easier. And we've tried, pretty much everything that's out there. We've tried long day corn silage. We've tried the different grasslages, rilage, and straw and grass hay we've used in the past as well. But still, it was something that was always on our mind, something we talked about, something we had to work to find. And generally speaking, we never really got it right. So at this particular meeting, I looked at Keith and I said, well, Keith, can't we feed the corn stover out of the corn silage? And he said, well, by the time you harvest the corn and drive it into the mud and try to harvest it, I said, no, not out of the field, but can't we harvest it out of the corn silage pile? And he had said, well, I've never heard of anybody doing that before, but I think that would make some pretty great feed. So that's what started us down our journey. We went down to the local welding shop and we asked them to build us a trommel. So we got it built, and it was a little on the rickety side, but we were pretty proud of that thing when we got it set up on its stands. We stuck an elevator in it and fed it with an old chopper box. So we metered it in there, and this thing ran for about 45 days, and it kind of ate itself up and needed to get rebuilt. But in that time, we realized that we could do this, and we were feeding the feed, and it was working. So with that, then now to kick this can down the road a little further, I knew that we had to get some money together and engineer and build a machine. And I knew that this was going to be quite a journey. So I asked all of our consultants at the time and a couple of friends whom are near and dear to me that are wise. And I asked that advisory group, do you think this is worth pursuing? And it was a resounding yes. So that began our journey. Up in the right-hand corner there, you see that grave machine. That's the Model 2.0. We did that one was engineered. It was a diesel machine that drove hydraulics, and we did a lot of learning on that machine. That one there ran for about a year and a half before we replaced it with with the next machine, which would be the 3.0. So,
Greg, we got some video here of the 3.0 machine, or maybe it's the 3.2. You can talk about that, but let's show this video and let people see in action what silage separation looks like today.
Sounds good.
Here we go.
Yep. So this is in our feed center, and the 3.0 is running. It's been sitting there for about 2.5 years, sort and feed.
The loader's loading unsorted silage then, Greg?
Yeah, so our feeder, his job is just keep that hopper full. So 5 scoops will fill it up, and it'll run for about 45 minutes until it needs to get filled again. A little bit later in our segment, we're going to talk about our feed center and how we operate it. But yeah, that's the gist of it. You just keep the hopper full, and it just continues to sort in the background as the feed guy's going through his day.
Maybe let me back up here, Greg. Okay, so we got. Let me stop that again. Let's go back to where we were at, just at the end here. Okay, let me pause here. So, Greg, would you just explain kind of what's going on in each 3 of these bins? What's on the left, the center, and the right?
Okay, so on the left hand is a hopper. It's basically a 4-auger mixer, but the augers are designed to feed an incline auger that goes up and feeds the trommel. And it does it in such a way that it handles the material kind of softly and gently, I guess, and then it meters it into the trommel. And the trommel is just basically a big cylinder that it's a screen cylinder that just rotates and sorts the feed according to size. So the finer particles will fall in that middle bay, and then the coarse particles will fall out the end. And in essence, what happens, but when you separate it by size, the finer particles consist of mostly the corn, and then the coarser particles will be leaves and the stover, I guess.
And then talk about the purpose of each one of those, the fines versus the FOD, and who gets fed what.
So initially, when we started doing this, we really didn't regard the fines as any value. That was just kind of what we were going to feed the cows as corn silage. We were going after that fodder because we wanted to replace the straw in our dry cow diets. But once we get into this a little bit, we realized that the fines were a lot bigger deal than we initially thought they were. So basically, looking back and kind of characterizing what we're doing is we're taking our corn silage and we're creating two different feeds now, and we'll get into the differences in those feeds here shortly.
So talk about this, Greg. You sent this photo. It looks like maybe even this morning looks like a morning photo or a sunset
I
photo.
took that this morning. So when I present to people, I usually have feed samples that people can touch and smell and taste. And this is as good as we can do on what we're doing today. In the top pile in the middle, that's our corn silage, and that's chopped at about 21 millimeter and processed with a shredlage processor. And then we separate it by size. So down below on the left-hand side is the fodder, the corn stover that we harvested out. And then what's left behind are the fines on the right-hand side. So you can see that there's differences in it, just the way that it, from appearance. So now we talk a little bit about the fraction analysis. You can see that there's two charts on the graph, 2024 and 2025, and then the measures are on the left, the fiber, the lignin, the undigestible fiber, and the starch. So corn silage is in the first column. This is kind of the tale of two corn silages. So 2024 was, you can see, high in starch. That was a short plant, short stature, but it had a lot of grain corn on it. So it was pretty good corn silage to start with. So then we run it through the machines, and that next column is the fines and then the fodder. You can see that we increased the starch levels 14%, brought it up to 45.7. And then you can see what we did to the different fiber fractions. We decreased them 12.8 and 12%. But if you look down at the 2025 corn silage, that was a tall plant with a lot of grain on it. And if you look down at the starch, it started out at about 36.41, and then we ran it through the machine, and we increased the starch up to 42.8%, basically. So we increased the starch about 18%, and then you can see the impact that we had on the different fibers. So 2025, you can see the difference. Every crop is going to have, I believe, different effective sorts, but we just wanted to show this to show that the different silages every year, we're going to always improve the fines from the starch perspective and from the profile of fibers every year. So, and then you can see what the fodder looks like. The fodder's lower in starch than and higher in fiber, to where the fiber is useful in the dry cow and heifer program. So this is a picture, Walt, of a cow that had just calved about 4 days ago. I had just sent you. It's such a pleasure since we've switched to this system, because when our cows calve, they stand up, they're strong, and they're hungry, and they're on their way. We used to be a farm that had problems with milk fevers, and since we switched to the fodder diets, that problem has basically kind of gone away. We've consistently run 1, maybe 2% milk fevers in some months, but the cows calve in, and when you come from where we came from, it's such a night and day difference. So we're just so pleased with the transition cow performance.
Greg, I think you got some data here to show as well.
Yeah. So, the first thing we noticed was the milk fever rate had gone down, and consistently month after month, we didn't have the problem anymore. But as time went on, we noticed DHIA sends out our reports, every quarter, I believe, or bi-monthly, I can't remember, but you check to see how you're doing in comparison to the herd mates. And so the graph on the left, the bar that goes across the horizontal bar represents the top 10%. And if you look at the second column, the first milks since we started doing this have been up close to 100%. This particular one is at 100%. So that is the calvings, percent of cows achieving success. And I don't really know what goes into that measure totally, but things are going good in that regard. And then if you look at the left-hand graph, this is the first milk, the fresh cows with first milk, above 40 and 50. You can see the consistent, I don't know what percentage we're running, but we didn't run that. We didn't have numbers like this prior to the diet that we're feeding now. So we get to enjoy this. And this is part of the production story that we're going to tell here shortly. It starts in the transition groups and then continues on. I want to point out a few things too about our farm and the way that things are. This data is a testament to our transition cow diets. And the reason that I say that is because our pens are overpopulated. Our pre-fresh and our post-fresh pens are overpopulated. Our cows walk on slippery. When our cow presents that they're going to have a calf, they get moved 500 feet on kind of semi-slippery floors, 500 feet to a calving pen. And then they calve out, and then they go back into their post-fresh group. Things aren't perfect on our farm. Someday they will be, but there are things that we're battling against, and we still have this type of success. So this right here also, if you go back to the previous graph, I know we don't have a lot of time, but Jim had alluded to this before we started, is that we think that we're having this success because we're feeding the same feed when the cows are in their transition period as they are when they calve. So there's no bacteria changeover in their rumens when they're making this transition. And we think that that's one of the reasons why we're having such success. So, all right, well, now if you want to flip through, you feel free. The feed cost savings and the efficiency. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the fines when we're feeding the fines. Like I said, we didn't really regard the fines as much, but we went through time feeding, the fodder, and then we realized that our milk production went up. We felt that right away. But Keith had mentioned our efficiencies had gone up, and actually to the point where he was a little bit worried about them, because when your efficiencies get too high, generally speaking, what's happening is your cows are losing body condition. So we were monitoring that pretty close. And as we went through time, the efficiencies kept getting better, but the cows are holding their condition. So we think that that by feeding the fines, there's a number of things that lend to it, but the fines are the reason that we believe why the efficiency is there. So,
Greg, I think your next one here is talking a little bit about just how you're evaluating the cost and some savings from.
Right. Yeah. So part of what I had to do with this project is try to build a machine that would economically fit on the farm. So when you build a machine, the daily cost weighed against feed savings is the first thing that we're looking at. So in this graph, we've got the different groups on the farm on the left, and then we've got their dry matter intakes, and then we've got the cost per day of farms not using a FOD machine. Then we have another column, the dry matter intake, and then cost of these rations on a farm that is using silage separation, and then the difference per day. So the savings in dollars per day are represented in that column. You can see the lactating ration saved about 12 cents in this example. The close-up diets, there's a lot of savings to be had there, $2.09 per cow per day, far off, $1.10, and then precipitously down in the heifer groups. So what I did then was I took my herd numbers and stuck them into these group numbers to get the savings per year. And then when you add those all up, my farm has heifers on it. When you add those all up, we would have saved $277,000 per year by separating silage out. If you follow that over to the left, that comes out to about $213 per cow, or 58 cents per hundredweight. If you take the two heifer groups off the bottom, then if you take the two heifer groups off the bottom, a herd without heifers would be able to save $169,000 a year, which would translate into about $130 a cow. So keep these numbers in mind, producers, if you're looking at this. If you have heifers to feed, you have the potential, we feel, to save $213 per milking cow. And then if you only have your dry cows, $130 per cow in savings. So that's what that graph represents. So I alluded to a little bit about the milk production bump that we started to enjoy. The quote there, the dairy has entered a new era of milk production. We truly have. And, you know, if I was honest about how much it would be, well, somewhere in here, I'll share what it's a lot. It's a lot of milk production gain that we gained, but at the same time, feeding the same amount of feed, which has a huge impact on the feed efficiency. So, oh, here it is right here. So we used to be a farm that used to run between 100 and 104 energy corrected milk. Now we run about 108 to 118. So what would that be? About 8 to 14 pounds of milk more now that we're running this machine. And I know it sounds crazy. Every farm would have different results, but it made a big impact here. So we talked about the feed efficiency. Here's a graph of our farm from 2020 up until about a year ago. In the first section of that, the yellow line is the feed efficiency. We weren't running a FOD machine. That was just our typical dairy and with our regular corn silage. And then we entered we got the FOD 2.0 running on the dairy. And when we look back, it shows that we increased our feed efficiency from a 1.67 to a 1.75. And then the FOD 2.0 broke down, and then the yellow line started again. And then the 3.0 was installed in early 2024. And you can see what the feed efficiency did then thereafter that, 1.8. Which makes sense. The FOD 2.0 was not as consistent as the 3.0, and you can see the difference. And that 0.1 on feed efficiency equates to quite a bit of money. On our dairy, it's about $452 per cow. So feed efficiency is a big deal. I want to, as long as I've got the opportunity, if you look back about where that 1.67 is on that graph, where the feed efficiency went low and the milk production went high, what do you suppose that was? That was the year we tried BMR corn. And that's the year, and so our milk went up, our feed efficiency went down because our intakes were so high. And that's the reason why we went away from it, went back to conventional corn. So I just think that's a fun fact. Another fun fact on here too, if you look at the Julys, in the summer months, your feed efficiencies are going to be higher in this climate anyway. And then when we get into the winter time, when the cows have to produce heat, then you see the feed efficiencies go down a little bit. So fun facts, I guess. Today we're at, or for this year, so this is that was an older graph. For this year, we averaged 108 for energy corrected milk and a 1.87 feed efficiency. So we did better yet than there. So this all falls back into the economic analysis. Return on investment. When you're making a dent in the feed costs and your increase in milk production, the numbers get pretty big, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. Walt, the next slide, let's skip that one and let's go on to the next one for now. So I put together, trying to figure out what this thing would cost per year. So I did a schedule of costs, and if we look at the 5-year column or a 7-year column, let's look at the 5-year column. So for the depreciation, we took the machine, we figured it'd be worth $50,000 after 5 years. So we have $360,000 to depreciate. Over that 5 years, we're paying $12,000 in interest, the electricity each year for the machine, and then maintenance for the machine. So the total cost to run a machine with a 5-year time schedule, $96,000. Now remember, back on that previous page, how many dollars per cow you can save on just the feed savings portion of this. So if you're a farm that that has heifers, take your number of cows times $213, and you'll see that it's pretty easy to pay for the machine with the feed cost savings. Or even if you're a dairy that just has dry cows on your farm, with $130 per cow, multiply that by the number of cows you milk, and you can see that the feed cost generally will pay for the payments on this machine, or the cost on this machine, about 2.5 times over. So, and then if you stretch it out to a 7-year, then it looks a little nicer, but that's just the feed savings portion of this. This isn't including the milk bump or the feed efficiency portion. So the way to take a look at this is to contact us and see if you can, we can help you through doing a cost analysis of running for the feed cost savings on the machine. So if you would want to go to that previous slide that we skipped, the silage strategies. So I did some work with trying to compare this as a silage strategy for the days when BMR disappears. We also have high chop as a strategy, and we also have, coming down the line, this short statured corn. In this graph, what I did was I took some conventional corn silage, and I believe this is a set of data from 3 years, 100 and some samples. So in that 3-year period, this is what the conventional corn silage averaged out as. The next column is that same 3 years, except BMR varieties. The next column is, and then the next column is the high chop. And for the high chop, what I did was I took the conventional numbers and ran them through the university's high chop calculator to come up with those values. So if you high chopped the conventional corn, those are the numbers that you would get. And then we took and then I took also the conventional numbers, ran them through our calculator for separation, and came up with the numbers in the far right column. And you can see if you go to milk per ton, pretty close to the bottom, how the different strategies stack up. So this has got us pretty excited to share with people, and the fact that all in all, once you get this corn silage run through the different processes or harvested, the separated fines comes out on top on the milk 24 number. And then just for fun, I ran the milk per ton times multiplied it times the yield per ton, and came up with pounds of milk per acre. And then actually after that, then I took the dollars per acre and multiplied it to come up with a dollars per acre number. So we're pretty excited about sharing our silage strategies chart with people, so they can see that this is a tool that in their toolbox that they could use to mitigate sometimes the problems that we have with conventional corn silage, being a year that would have too high of fiber or too low of digestibility. So one of the things too I want to share is that when we first started doing these tests, we ran all NIR tests with a couple of wet chem tests just to make sure that our NIR tests were accurate enough to make rations with. And we didn't see we didn't see any difference in digestibility. But once we started doing some more wet chem tests, we did notice that you can see in our the NDFD number here was increased by about 3 points, 3.3%. So in the wet chem, we did see an increase in digestibility, which is a positive too, a big positive. So I don't know how we're doing on time, Walt.
Yeah, just talk about how this has scaled for your farm and how it could scale for other farms too.
Okay, so our farm runs the bottom unit. That's a one trommel system down there that can handle, if you have young stock, it can handle a 1,500 cow dairy in 8 hours. If you only have dry cows on a farm, you could separate 3,000 cows worth of feed in an 8-hour period. If you have more cattle than that, then you can scale it up and put one alongside it. And if you have more cattle than that, then we can start playing with elevations and doing what we have to do to get enough feed through. On our farm, the idea was to create a machine that would be able to do this process in the time that our feed guy is down in the mix and feed or down in the feed building. And that our guy runs an 8-hour day. So that's what we scaled, and that's what we used as our benchmark to design the equipment. The piece of equipment costs our feed guy about 10 minutes a day, 5 minutes worth of filling the hopper and just keeping that hopper full, and a couple of minutes underneath just to clean the feed up underneath. So the next day we have fresh feed going to the cattle. The machine is built, anything that's in the machine is stainless steel or plastic. It's built for longevity. It has to be. The machine can't break down. The feed center. Now we were lucky enough with this innovation to build a feed center. Initially, I was just going to build a lean-to and then build the feed center later, but we ended up having a pretty good year and we pulled the trigger on the feed center. And I'll tell you, we thought that one of the big paybacks was going to be shrink, and that does improve. The shrink payback is a real number, but one of the real paybacks was the fact that if you make the job easy for your guy to do a good job, he will do a good job. So the precision that our batches are mixed at now, without any fatigue, our guy's not crawling in and out of equipment all day. It's that shrink. When you enter that into the equation, our feed center paid for itself in less than 2 years, I believe. So if any of you guys are thinking about a feed center, it's one of those things that I didn't get to see it until we did it and then reevaluated it and then saw the value in it. So feed center. So looking ahead, I had alluded to the fact that things aren't perfect on our dairy, and there's many things that aren't right about our dairy or perfect, but maybe someday they will be. You can see the picture on the right. That's our parlor. We're still milking in a double 16 flat parlor. We're proud to say we get 1,250 cows through that thing three times a day. It's worked well. It's one of those things that's worked so well we really haven't had to address it, but we have been pinched. We can't add any cows in our system because we're limited there now. So my son has come back to the farm here, and he's 29. He's got a lot of energy. We've decided to put in a rotary parlor, a 60 stall rotary parlor. The bottom picture is a picture of the farm today where we've got the excavating done. We're hoping to be milking in it in May. We feel that the competitive advantage that we have with this silage separation and the numbers that it gives us the confidence to reinvest back in our dairy. In our family, they give us the reason to do that. So that's kind of where we're at today. Nathan, you can see he's to the left of me in that picture, or to the right with the white shirt on. He is a powerful, powerful young man. I tell you, to be pushed aside by him to pick up something heavy, that just that'll fill your heart up right there. So, and like I said, we still got the young ones coming up, and we'll continue our adventure and see where it goes.
Greg, thank you for your presentation today. And Scott, let's get ready to move into our Q&A section here. So explain how that's going to work.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. You can submit questions using the Q&A tab, and then we're going to play a real quick video, and then we'll be right back to answer your questions. The economics of feeding ReAssure precision release choline. ReAssure is fed during the transition period, and because it's fed for such a short period of time, it costs just $15 per cow, and yet the benefits will continue to generate income throughout the year. Cows fed ReAssure produce 5 pounds more colostrum, which pays for your ReAssure investment on the very first day of lactation. Cows fed ReAssure also produce 5 pounds more milk per day, every day. That means after the first day, Every day is payday. Invest in Reassure during the transition period and recoup your investment on the very first day of lactation. After that, you got it. Payday. All right. As a reminder, you can still submit your questions using the Q&A tab at the top of your screen. Walt, what's our first question?
Yeah, a lot of good questions coming in here. So continue to throw those in here if you have questions you'd like to ask Greg about silage separation. Greg, just kind of some basic questions to start with. If you would explain what chop length you're doing with the silage, if you're using any inoculants, and just maybe seed selection, just generally, what's your approach for the silage crop you're trying to grow?
Okay, generally speaking, we have 6 different conventional hybrids in our lineup, and then we, we'll switch them in and out, interchange every year. So we just try to have a good conventional lineup to gather from. Chop length, we used to chop at about 19 millimeter. We've increased it to 21 to make it a little easier to sort, which works out well. You can see from the fines that the cows don't get any of that length. One of the things that we learned, and I didn't emphasize enough, was if we have consistent sizing in our rations, we don't have sorting. And sorting is the key to our feed efficiency, and it's the key to our milk production. Day after day, the cows are getting the same bite full that the nutritionist put on paper. Whatever time of the day and day after day, it's amazing. Does that answer that question fully?
Yep.
Well,
Any inoculants or anything you're doing when you're putting the silage up?
Yeah, we do use Booteneri in our corn silage, and bunk length is the reason that we decided to use that, because we've noticeably seen that. One thing I can say that in the summertime, our corn silage based diets don't heat like they did when we had straw in them. Straw will light up and it'll be warm the next day. All of that's out of the, we don't have to worry about that with our silage being treated with Booteneri.
And then any coverings that you're doing specifically with over the top of the silage when you're putting it up?
Yeah, we use an oxygen barrier an oxygen barrier, and then we'll put plastic on top, and we cover tire to tire.
Okay.
Hey, Greg, I'm kind of curious. Now that you're sorting your silage, has that impacted how you process the silage in the field and your chop length there?
Yes. So, like I say, we added length to our chop to make it a little bit easier to sort. Some silages are different than others, so we're kind of learning that if we have a short-statured corn, we'll want to lengthen our chop a little bit because there's less fodder to be had to start with. And then if we have a meaty crop, then we can go ahead and chop a little finer because there's plenty of fodder to sort out as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Good deal. There's a question here about how often you are sampling your separated silage. How often are you just checking numbers on the fines in the fodder?
So every 2 weeks, I'll sample our fod and our fines. I'll take 2 different samples throughout that morning, and then and we'll send them in. We multiple sample, and then we average, So we'll take those 2 samples, average them, and then we'll also take a look at the last 2-week period where we sampled, and we'll react a little. We'll kind of average them too. So averaging is kind of, I think, the key.
Okay. Question here: does dry matter content differ between the 2 fractions, the fines and the fodder?
Yep, that's a good question. Yes, the fines will be less moisture than the fines. Because the corn is a little bit drier and there's more corn in the fines. So, I would say probably 3 points. If you start with corn silage at 65, you might be down to a 62 in your fines, and you might be up to 68, 69 with your fodder.
Okay. Question here. I think we're talking about kind of just the quantity, the percentage when you sort it out. What percentage do you get fodder versus fines out of your processed corn silage?
So we've over the last 5 years of doing this, we've ranged from silage crops about 18% up to, I think today we're sorting about 28% out as fodder. And that's how we measure that, is by percentage of fodder that we're getting out the end. One of the things that I forgot to mention about the fodder and the fines is when we put that into rations and try to figure out the cost, if you take corn silage and you separate it into two streams and if you have the corn follow the value of the corn silage follow the corn, the fines become more valuable because they have more corn in them, and the fodder becomes less valuable. I shouldn't use the term valuable. It has less value because it has less corn in it. So if you have $50 corn silage, your fines become $60 and your fodder becomes $26. So when you enter that into your rations, that's where you get to see the feed savings come from.
A question here from a producer in Denmark. They have restrictions on making corn silage. Would this potentially work with, say, a grass silage?
If you're trying to probably get some grain out of that grass silage, I bet it would probably help. I guess I don't have experience in that arena.
Okay.
I guess.
Are there dairies where you feel like silage separation would not be worth the investment? Maybe it's herd size or their inventory. And then also kind of how do you assign the value dollars per ton to the fines and fodder to determine your per cow per head feed cost?
Okay, so I think I addressed the feed cost portion of the fodder and fines. I have come across dairies that are in areas of our country that have unlimited amounts of grass available at a very cheap price. So if they have basically really inexpensive grass to feed, the feed savings portion won't be there as predominantly as it would be in most of the Midwest. Whether or not, depending on how much corn silage they feed to their lactating cows to see the benefits from milk production standpoint and the feed efficiency standpoint, there may be some value there, but that's what we've seen.
Okay. Good. Bunch of questions still coming in here, so we'll keep going. Before you switch to separating for silage, you mentioned that you had tried multiple different things to replace straw in the transition ration. Anything else that you would mention that you had tried? Someone mentioned here sorghum, Sudan grass, or any kind of other crops besides straw that you've tried.
Well, we have not tried sorghum, but we have done the rilage, and we've done oatlage, and we've done the long day corn, hay, grass hay, and then also straw. But one of the things to speak to that is that we don't have to mess around with these smaller crops anymore. We don't have to go out and harvest 200 acres of a grasslage or 300 acres of this or that in the off seasons. We go out and we harvest our corn silage and we harvest our haylage. All the auxiliary stuff that we used to do is gone. And when that's gone, that's money saved. When you don't have wheels turning, you don't have money flowing, right? So there are some, and I'm not familiar with them, but there are some people that are incorporating their manure into their the way that they grow, I think, sorghum and some of their other plants, where it gives them the ability to put manure out as well. But silage separation has an impact on dairies from the nutrient standpoint, in that now we have more crops pulling nutrients off of our ground rather than bringing and importing phosphorus and adding to our soil. So from a net nutrient recycling, our dairy is recycling more of the nutrients itself. So that's a pretty in-depth concept there, I guess. But
good. Thank you, Greg. Another question here, talking about two questions here, two birds with one stone. Any experience with mycotoxin concentration in the fodder part, and also 8 hours to separate and then potentially being fed the next day? How stable are both of those fractions of the feed?
Okay. The first question, I'm going to go to the second question, I guess, Walt. 8 hours. Everything that we do in the summertime is faced in the morning. And then we process it and we feed it. We try to have no leftovers, right? We get into late September and in October. Now we'll go ahead and start facing the pile the day ahead of time, moving it into the feed center and having that staged to feed the next day. So you have to handle it differently in the different temperatures that you're dealing with. But like I said before, our feeds are more stable now than they were prior to this. So. But you have to do it correctly. The first question, Walt, was what? I'm sorry.
Just any experience with having a mycotoxin issue and then concentrating that because you're putting it into maybe it's coming in the fines or something.
Well, from what I've experienced, most of our mycotoxin problems are problems in our lactating pens. So I don't know if we've had any mycotoxin problems that have affected our transition cows, but we do have mycotoxins just like everybody else does in their corn silage. In fact, right now we've got some vomitoxin and we're feeding. I don't even know what we're feeding now, but we're having to deal with it. It hasn't changed. It hasn't changed from what we had to do before. We just, it pops up on our screen and we add an additive, and knock on wood, thank you, Lord, that we've never come across a silage pile that you actually can't really feed. You know what I mean? Where you can't really feed it readily. So,
kind of a hypothetical question here. What percent of the diet dry matter of the coarse fraction, the FOD, could be fed to the far off and close up dry cows?
Well, so we've been doing this for 5 years and we've seen extremes, and the extremes are generated from our inventory. So we have a lot of haylage on hand. We feed a lot of haylage. And if we don't have a lot of haylage on hand, we don't feed, or then we have to feed a lot of corn silage. So we've seen both extremes in the last 5 years. We have fed our dry cows, the far offs, 100% of the FOD as their forage. We are right now currently feeding 100% of our FOD, or of our close-ups. They're getting 100% of the FOD right now. Our far offs right now are getting, like I said, we have fed them 100%. Now they're getting about 2/3 FOD, 1/3 haylage. We're working on haylage inventories. So we've been to both extremes and it works well with the heifers as well. We've had times where we're 100% FOD, excuse me, and we've had times like right now we're feeding a lot of haylage to them. So,
good question here. Perfect dry matter percentage in the corn silage. If you could maybe wave a magic wand and get it just right, what percentage dry matter would you like to put in silage like that?
My perfect corn silage would probably be 63.5 to 64. We start chopping at about 65.5. I don't know. I'm not afraid of going a little bit drier than we used to. I want to utilize all of the starch that's out there. And, as this corn silage dries down and matures out, our fiber levels are going along their path and they're increasing. But I'm not afraid of that because if you saw them charts before, we're taking close to 20% of the fiber out of the corn silage before we feed it to the cows. And one other thing that we've noticed too, since we've started doing this, is by taking, 18, I think, percent of the NDF out of our corn silage, that allows us room to feed a little bit more NDF or fiber in our haylage. So, we used to try to target 180 relative feed value haylage because we needed that to be able to get all the nutrients in the cow's stomachs to fit it in there to get good milk out of them. But, now, our target is 150. Much of the numbers that you've seen from our production is us feeding 135 relative feed value haylage is what our fourth and third crop last year. So the numbers that I'm showing you are numbers with haylage numbers not being as good as they have had to be in the past, and still be able to feed a high forage ration and get good milk production and good efficiency out of it. So that helps with your production, your alfalfa harvest costs. And, there's a lot to that, I guess.
Good. Greg, you brought Jim Smith with you. He's a nutrition strategist working with you. And I have a question for Jim. Jim, what opportunities and challenges does this method, this silage separation, present to consulting nutritionists? Or maybe another way to ask is, what do consulting nutritionists need to understand about this technology and how it's being implemented to be able to apply it somewhere else on a different farm that hasn't tried it yet?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that in reality, you're making your corn silage better every year that you're feeding to your lactating cows by moving a fairly high percentage of the most undigestible nutrients to the fodder side of the equation. And that allows that energy density in the forage base to really accentuate that efficiency that everybody is really looking for that bottom line advantage on the checkbook, right? When you can get more milk, you're shipping more energy corrected milk per pound of dry matter intake that's very consistent because of the sizing that takes place with the machine, you end up with a lot more dollars on the bottom line. There may be some concern out there at times that we've had expressed to us about, are we moving too much of the UNDF 240 towards that fodder side of things for the lactating cows? And, there's been some studies up at Minor Institute where they've shown even when it appears that maybe the PE UNDF 240 is low in the diet, they've never been able to show that it's had a deleterious effect on cow health or milk production. So I think it's more of a limiting factor on the high side than on the low side. The other thing that I think that comes up is, boy, we've had such success with the cookie cutter diet for pre-fresh. But as Greg mentioned earlier, by having the same forage base coming in on the post-fresh as what they were receiving pre-fresh, we're not having to wait for that potentially indigestible portion of the straw still in the diet beforehand and afterwards to move through the digestive system. And that's where I think you're seeing the great milk starts that Greg is experiencing in his herd, because again, they're having the same forage base. There's no transition time for the bacterial population, and they don't have to work through that portion of the straw that's still waiting to move through the digestive tract. So a lot of positives, hard to pick out any negatives. So I think what it's doing is accentuating the cow's ability to have those quick milk starts because there's no transition. As we know, we're feeding the bacterial population, quote unquote, not so much the cow. And when they don't have to make an adjustment because they're receiving the same thing pre and post, we've got fantastic milk starts with little milk fever at all.
Greg, or maybe Jim, the question here, have you ever encountered a butterfat challenge or a rumen function challenge where you had to make changes to the milk cow ration to correct something? Maybe, for example, effective fiber wasn't where you wanted it to be.
Well, when we started this out, we were pretty keen on keeping an eye on that. Keith was kind of concerned and questioning that too when we started out. But what we learned was when you shake the stuff out in a Pennsylvania is it the Pennsylvania shaker box? Penn State shaker box, sorry. What you find is when we're feeding the fines, they're higher in starch. So we're going to feed less grain corn. So we end up having less fines on the bottom screen, more in the middle, and less on top. So basically, more of the feed is on the middle screen, which I think we're finding out, at least I would say we found out is a better place to be, because last winter, the butterfat tells you the health of the rumen, right? Last year we ran a 4.8. We peaked out at 4.85, I think, for a stint of time before the heat started settling back in. So I think that our lactating cows, rumens are healthy. I know that our dry cow diet or our dry cow rumens are healthy. And the fact that, when we used to feed straw, the manure was inconsistent. Some were pretty hard. Some were just like, horse turds where you kind of got to be careful. You'll trip over them. That cow was constipated. She had a bellyache, but you go in our pens now, and unless there's a problem, every cow has the same consistency to their manure. It just seems to be flowing nicely through them. So
we're almost here at the top of the hour. Just another question for both Greg and Jim, maybe in conclusion here. Just if you would kind of talk about something that you wish more people understood when you explain this concept that is true and you wish you could magically convey to folks based on the experience you've had with this silage separation.
Jim, you start.
Well, I think the thing that I like to mention the most, that I like to have people really take in and think through it. The machine, by separating it into these two components, in essence, every year, no matter how good of a corn silage crop you have, every year you turn on that machine and put that year's corn silage through it, you end up with a better corn silage for your lactating cows every year. And to my knowledge, there's no other way to do that. Once it's in the pile, it is what it is, right? But you turn on that machine, you just made your corn silage better every year. And the other component that comes out of it, the fodder, ends up being an ideal feed that works for your dry cows, pre-fresh and far off. And you don't sacrifice by leaving it in the field with a high chop program. So you're gaining the most nutrients. You're creating a tremendously positive system in your field also, because you're making one trip across the field, less compaction. You're going to end up building organic matter because of that tremendous root system that corn has. So you're also getting the chance to actually plant more corn silage that's going to allow you to move more manure nutrients out to your own ground. So there's so many positives that surround this aspect of the fodder and the fod machine.
We're probably running short on time, Walt, so I'll try to be as brief as I can. What would I want somebody to know? I'm on the other side of this, right? So there's so many things that I could say that people are not going to really understand. I mean, one of the things that I realized is every farm is so different out there. Everyone's got their own things going on, but the cows are the same, right? The cows are the same on all these dairies. And that's why I've got such confidence that this is going to work, because this is making such an impact on how we're presenting the feed to the cows. And we're getting back to the basics. Let's make our feed more dense. Let's make it so they can't sort it. And let's let the cows do what they can do when they don't have bumps in the road. We've got a mobile machine that we're going to be starting up next week that we're going to be able to take to farms so they can see it for themselves. Our intention is to get it on a farm, run one of their lactating pens on fines, feed their fodder to whoever they want to. But in a month's time, they'll be able to see the feed efficiency go up, and their milk will start to go up too. So we're going to start having people testifying to that now, finally. And we also have our third and fourth unit coming off the assembly line here next month. And the month after, those are going to get placed. There's a lot of neighbors looking at those machines. We've got our one in Ohio, and they're having success with that. And there's people that are watching that machine, and they're going to have continued success after we get out of the heat of the summer and things start flying again. We're at the precipice of some good things happening for the cows out there, I believe. And I'm just happy and thankful that I get to be the one that tells people about it. And yeah, I guess that's all I have.
Well, thank you, Greg. Thank you, Jim. We'd like to thank you for your time today. Great questions from the audience. Specifically, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Balchem and Novanesis. Scott, would you close us out, send us off officially?
Yeah, would just kind of echo what you just said. Wanted to thank our sponsors. Want to thank everybody for attending today's webinar. Recording of today's webinar will be available on the Real Producer Exchange YouTube channel. Just search youtube.com for Real Producer Exchange. Also, be sure to check back to balchem.com/realscience or agproud.com/real producer for upcoming webinars throughout the year. More updates on featured operations are on the way, so keep an eye out for these exciting announcements. Walt, wanted to just again thank everybody for joining today, for our sponsors, and I wanted to thank you for helping us put this on, and want to thank everybody for a great conversation. And on behalf of Greg, Walt, Jim, and the teams from Novanesis, Balchem, and Progressive Dairy, thank you for joining us today. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.